Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Branding Like a Boss, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of the cannabis industry's most influential brands and the talented minds behind them. I'm your host, Angela Pih, and today we're joined by Daniel Cook, CEO of True Terpenes, a product-led, science-first company at the forefront of cannabis innovation. In today's episode, we're going to explore strategies, challenges, and leadership insights Dan has encountered while building one of the industry's most trusted companies, from navigating complex regulatory landscapes to powering some of the top performing products and brands in the market today. True Terpenes plays a pivotal role in shaping the sensory safety standards of modern cannabis. You are all in it for a real treat. Hi, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Angela. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the show. So let's dive right in. Before you got into True Terpenes, and before you came into the cannabis industry and you took on the challenge at True Terpenes, what drew you to our industry and your background that makes you a force to be contended with?
Yeah, I'll start from the beginning. Give a little bit of background. Way before True Terps, I was actually a literature major in college. Didn't know the first thing about business. Had no aspiration to get into business. Ended up applying for a scholarship to go study wine in South America in Chile. And so I spent several years backpacking around Chile and stomping grapes and learning about the wine industry. And around that time, ended up working for a fly fishing company as well, before I made my way over to a group that had a venture capital fund and really worked with entrepreneurs kind of on frontier markets, much like cannabis is. They were doing venture capital down in South America at a time when it didn't really exist. And so I was inspired to work with growth companies through that experience at Endeavor. Ended up later on joining a larger wine group out of Argentina. For the first time, really worked to kind of harness soil and sunlight and curate a very fragile plant in wine grapes, and really became interested in leveraging that to shape human experience. So when I made my way over to True Terpenes about 5 years ago, I had that background, was interested in growth, very interested in how you can harness plants into human experience, and found True Terpenes at a time when they're really in that scale-up mode, which was my sweet spot to really help companies pass that 0 to 1 phase to grow and become greater.
Well, for a world-class and global level CEO who's come into the cannabis industry, what was the opportunity that you saw at True Terpenes as a way of developing something from that close to next level change?
Yeah, with True Terps had been around for 5 years before I got here, and the inception of the company really was the founder himself found the power of cannabis to really up-level his quality of life. He had founded a clinic to put patients in connection with doctors and with licenses and scale that up over time, but really found a deficiency in the terpene supply chain in cannabis and worked and founded the company to normalize that and standardize that. So the foundational aspect of this really was to create, not to flip something quick, not to, print money, get in, get out, but it was really to build something to last and that could really set the bar, set the standard for the cannabis industry. He saw it and we see it today as such a powerful force, despite all the volatility and the challenges and the obstacles that we all go through. We really wanted to build longevity and credibility. And so the decisions we've made kind of throughout the 10 years of our history have really been, to build something for the long term that'll be around for a while and really set the standards, not just wait for them to arrive.
So that guiding vision of creating something that is going to build, improve, and up-level the overall industry. And also, from Chris's story, really at the core of it, healing, right?
Absolutely. Very much about healing. Before True Terpenes, he went through his personal, experience, went through some deep, searching, research. He actually looked deeply into the work of Dr. Ethan Russo and the entourage effect. And he was, that began his journey to really figure out how this could improve his quality of life, and then how he could share that with others.
Yeah. And as the company matures, for True Terpenes, how are you seeing that vision carry through and scale?
Yeah, I think when I came here, I did kind of a deep search into what made the company who it was to that point, and what were the things, especially in a volatile industry where the ground kind of changes under you all the time. You have to know what to hold on to when there is a bit of chaos, when you have some obstacles. And so we also went through kind of aspirationally, who do we want to be, and what decisions do we want to stand behind kind of going forward. And culture really is, what people do when no one's looking. And
Yep.
so for me, I wanted to have a firm grounding in that, and an understanding of how we would act as a company going forward. And so it became a real foundation of decisions, to set pesticide thresholds or solvent thresholds, to be the first at GMP or ISO or FSSC certification, to start the first toxicology program of any company like ours, a work in progress over the last 5 years, really to deliver safe solutions to our clients and to the public.
And
So it's an ongoing work.
I can only imagine, because for a company that's not consumer facing, however, the product that True Terpenes customers are creating, consumers get to experience the end product, right? So for True Terpenes and what it creates, it's almost sort of like the invisible aspect. So how does that trust get built over time with the consumer and with the customer?
Yeah, with the customer, it's consistency. It's kind of being in the trenches. We see what we do really is work with our clients to help them deliver solutions. We don't sell ingredients in a bottle, right? It is the whole solution. And it's really working to own the client relationship, own the solution, so own the end experience. We're not building something that's kind of isolated from that end experience. And we shape, billions of dollars of experience with cannabis products. And so we see, as a trusted advisor for our clients, we see them through that whole process and really own it end to end. And I think when you're with them and you help them navigate through this marketplace and survive, and not only survive, but grow and thrive and identify revenue generating opportunities, that builds trust and credibility over time. But it's consistency over time.
So is that trust different from market to market? You're based in Portland, I'm based in California. Our market's a little bit more mature than the rest of the US, but as a global company, you're also seeing the evolution of different markets. So how does that trust translate?
Yeah, it's a lot different. We export to 70 countries, and we have for years now. And these markets are all at different rates of evolution. In Europe, they're setting up, in places like Germany, stable federal frameworks to allow for the growth of cannabis in the future. Very quickly, Germany became, from a non-existing market to a market about the size of Florida. And so, yes, there's different rates of change, and there's an evolution from like drug to medicine to lifestyle. And in different markets, it's at a different stage. So you very much have to look at these, not only here in the States, Oregon to California to New York to Maryland, as different markets, but we're a global company, and we really do try to take that viewpoint of empathy with our clients, understand their specific situation, and then we've built out a pretty broad range of solutions to really adapt and help them grow with the different markets that they're in. But it's very situation, very location specific.
And that nuance of trust, whether it's the integrity and the safety of the product, helping brands deliver on promises that they're making to the end consumer, and also helping brands stay competitive within their markets. So trust comes in different layers.
It does. It does. I think, especially here in the US, the trust is earned through reduction of complexity. It is so hard. When I say empathy for the client, it is so hard to be a consumer, to be a cannabis brand and a cannabis, product developer or manufacturer. You have to contend with all the stuff we know, 280E, competing with the black market, fragmented state by state, shifting regulatory landscape. So we have a lot of empathy for that. And the more we can serve them and help them reduce some of that complexity, we don't want to add complexity to them, but make their lives simpler and give them a more direct line to revenue, to generating revenue through excellent products. That's what we do, and that's really how we address it. We want to be able to also leverage a lot of the data. We have a unique vantage point. It's about, as I mentioned before, about $8 billion of products we help shape a year.
Wow.
And we see a lot of data. We see what's working, what's not working. We see that, as you mentioned, by geography, by location. And so we help them kind of adapt and reduce that complexity and really address those opportunities.
Yeah, and I remember on an occasion you mentioned that, just again, from your experience of a very sophisticated wine industry into the cannabis industry, where taste, flavor, consumer preference is so dominant, even with a strain or with a flavor like strawberry, True Terpenes has numerous different nuance of what a strawberry would taste like to a consumer, whether it's in a vape or it's going to go into a pre-roll or into an edible. And I think that's that level of product sophistication, trust that it's going to be consistent all the time. And one of the other aspects is that, for any company to be successful in cannabis, you really need to understand supply chain.
Mm-hmm.
How are your customers going to be getting their product to market, and how reliant they are on partners such as yourselves in making sure that they're going to be able to get their ingredients input at the speed that you promised.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the speed aspect is huge. Things move fast in cannabis. Opportunities open up and close extremely, at a fast pace. And so, yeah, I mean, our SLAs, the pace at which we deliver is 48 hours on catalog products will ship. And so getting them to the opportunities as quickly as possible is key. And, really developing the supply chain solutions behind that to always have the supply. We've been on all sides of this in terms of supply. We have our own genetics program developing type 3 hemp. We have, full spectrum HTE products. We have fresh frozen, terpene extracts from hemp, down to the botanical and other natural extracts, and then other minor compounds that are used in formulations. So again, we want a robust supply chain, solution that can help the market pivot. You can't have a single point of failure if the regs change. So you have to kind of navigate a broad palette to paint with in terms of the solutions. We match that with sensory to come up with, the best product experience that you can deliver, and then you got to get it to them on time.
Well, it's so critical because most cannabis companies I know are only ordering when they need it, and then they want you to hurry up.
Yeah.
Whether it's on the hardware side or inputs or oils. And so as they're managing their cash flow, just being able to be dependent on partners like True Terpenes to be able to get them what they need when they need it is something that's going to help them with their business, because you can't not have some shelf.
Yeah, no, forecasting is tough, and it's not, it's harder, again, from our client's perspective, it's harder to forecast in cannabis than anywhere else. And so what we try to do is work hand in hand with them to develop forecasts. Like I said, we have pretty sophisticated data models and systems. We're able to look at past order histories and discern patterns, and actually help them develop the forecast. So we do that to the extent possible. But we have a facility here in Oregon that's capable of holding quite a bit of inventory and responding to demand, as it comes real time.
Oh, well, let's talk about the facility in Oregon, and the lab, which is really at the core of innovation and scientific rigor. You have an exceptional team. I've met some of them, and there's a level of scientific compliance and regulatory compliance that I haven't really seen in other companies. So how do you hold true to that and build for it?
Yeah, it was a decision. A lot went into building this facility back in 2022. I won't lie, it was painful at the time. Transitioning into this, we hired 60 people within 6 months, and then had to integrate those people and kind of expand our scope of operations. So it was very much, the plane's taken off and we're putting the wings on it at the time. And by mid 2023, we navigated through a lot of that and just have really enjoyed the advantage of the facility and the capabilities we built. It is GMP, ISO certified, FSSC certified. We are gunning for the highest safety standard for worker safety, by OSHA right now, and kind of going through our paces for that. It's class 7 clean rooms. When you see this, it does look very dialed in, and it is. And so having this rocket ship behind us and really being able to rely on this and scale up with this, we can scale 10x our size with very minor disruption. And we're building a campus over here. It's not just this one building. We're in the middle of building out a second building to enhance capabilities, extend our applications laboratories, because we have analytical labs, but also applications. We look at beyond liquid in a bottle into that end experience, for the cannabis consumer. And so the breadth and the scope of what we're doing is very much an ecosystem that supports the clients.
Amazing. Well, product development and product innovation has to be at the heart of the company. So if we were to walk in and meet some of the product team, what do you think that we would experience from that, the storytelling and really being able to articulate the scientific rigor of what they go through?
So I worked, when I was in wine, I worked at Moët Hennessy, and they have, some of the most advanced, sophisticated wines, champagnes, perfumes in the world. And they take sensory very seriously. They have a lot of discipline, a lot of rigor and structure behind what they do and how they approach it. The hedonics, the sensory aspect, the experience of the products, essentially. And what we're doing very much takes from that playbook and is very much at that level, despite our relative size. That's a 100,000 person company. So we're obviously much smaller, but we are taking a page from what's been established, well before us in terms of sensory science. And all that boils down to, in client speak, is what do people experience when they experience your products, right? And so what you would see our team doing is really shaping that experience and using some very classic tools and methodologies and disciplines to understand the experience of the product and really focus on, refining that and getting to what we want to deliver for our clients and for their consumers. One of the exciting, oh no, go ahead, sorry.
Consistency, if I'm a consumer buying a certain brand on a consistent basis, I want it to taste the same. I want to make me feel the same every single time. And there's an expectation. So again, delivering on your client's promises.
Absolutely. And, and with consistency, one of the hardest parts is not just the sesquiterpenes, the monoterpenes, some of the heavier molecules or the cannabinoids. The cannabis plant has up to 1,000 compounds in it. It's a very complex plant, more complex than your best Bordeaux, which is probably about 800 compounds. And so it has 1,000 that really shape that experience. And I think once you get beyond the heavier molecules into some of the lighter volatiles and the more kind of exotic compounds that you'll find in the cannabis plant, that's where it becomes really interesting, and that's where the magic happens. These compounds are very difficult to harness and to kind of retain in cannabis products through extraction, off-gassing, shelf life degradation. And so a lot of our work over the past few years really goes into those parts per million, parts per billion compounds that disproportionately shape the experience.
Wow. Well, how do you make that happen with, the scale of things? Give us a sense of True Terpenes scale today, the number of SKUs, the number of products that your team has developed.
Yeah, so the scale, we've developed over 5,000 unique formulations over our history. Our client count is about 5,000 clients in 70 countries. And we've put about $45 billion worth of products into the market, over our lifespan. So the scale is great, and we operate on different levels for our product development. But again, what we try to do is develop kind of buckets of compounds and combinations of extracts that we can really use that alchemy, that blending, to deliver that next level experience. And reintroducing some of those volatile lighter compounds into the experience really helps separate products on the shelf, right? Too often there's kind of a commoditization of products out there, over reliance on THC to an extent. Not that there shouldn't be high THC products, but there's even in the high THC products, there's more to it than just high THC, right? It takes those other compounds to really round out the experience.
For sure, because your customers are not going to want to pick something off the shelf and have it be the same as, their other competitors' version of that product. So part of that formulation, dialing it in, but being able to take care of that at scale so that they are competitive.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's like one of the most fascinating nuances about sensory experience is that if you and I consumed the same thing, you and I would have very different or may have very different personal experiences. Like, how does it make you feel? What's the onset? What do I taste versus what you taste?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the kind of untold story here is the power of the human nose is scent. It's the most impactful of our senses. The human nose can detect over 1 trillion unique smells. And the distinction here is when you consume a cannabis product, it's really a retronasal, experience, meaning it's a combination of mouthfeel, taste on your taste buds, but most importantly, smell. And smell is really what has an outsized impact on your experience. With smell, you're going directly to the limbic system, right? You're bypassing rational thought, and it goes there immediately. That's why a smell or a certain strain can transport you back 15, 20 years in an instant. It doesn't get processed by the thalamus, and every other sense that humans have does go through that rational process. So the potential physiological impact of smell is profound, and it's what makes cannabis so powerful.
Yeah, that's right. This one cultivar Blue Dream expressed so many different ways, from cultivation to, uh, the way that it's being expressed in different products. It's going to give you a slightly different type of effect. I know that sometimes if I'm trying it from one market to another, from a different dispensary, it's going to make me feel different, in a different sort of way. And if we apply that level of experience to a global opportunity and global expansion, since True Terpenes is shipping and servicing clients across the global stage. How are you developing different products for different markets? What's the customer relationship like from one market to another? And also, more importantly, what is third part innovation? How is that different from market to market?
Mhm.
We're talking about countries, not just states.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. I think what innovations for us, we have a kind of a running innovation program, and those are really to identify new ways of building products, right? That can really break through for our clients, and that's presented then as a platform for our clients where we'll customize it to their particular situation. We can have clients also come in with a kind of vision or a dream for what they want to build, and we can work with them on that vision or on that dream. In the best sense, when we're at our best, we really are a trusted advisor for our clients. We are tip of the spear for innovation. We help them not only build the products but identify the opportunities, right? So identify in these markets, there's gaps in your portfolio. You don't have products that just grew maybe 50% last quarter and generated in the states that you're in 100 million revenue for those brands. And beyond the market research that kind of identifies the brands and the strain names, our research really points out to the building blocks of flavor and of experience. And so we're really getting to the root of it and leveraging that intelligence for our clients, and then building solutions to capitalize on those opportunities is essential. But it doesn't stop there. We have application scientists who will work on, the pre-roll application or the vape application or the gummy application. We will have a toxicology group make sure that the ingredients we're using are safe. That's increasingly important in markets like the EU. where we've been helping clients, deliver EU compliant terps for the past 18 plus months, right? And they're really helping them navigate and get through that approval process, which is very
Mm,
rigorous for Europe. And then it's also, just planning the future of their product roadmaps, making sure that they have a solid product vision that helps them not miss opportunities in the marketplace and make sure that they're, putting their best foot forward with their product portfolios.
that's so true. You just came back from the UK, right? So what are you hearing from Europe?
With Europe, it's a little bit different. There are obviously emerging federal frameworks, which is a very positive thing longer term. Wish we had one here. But there are market by market nuances, just like there are state by state here. You have more advanced markets like Germany with more scale, and then you have markets like the UK, which show a lot of promise and inevitably will scale up, but are still navigating some of the proper regulatory balances in the short term. The kind of level of compliance, the level of safety, the value of our safety data has been huge over there and has really resonated and has given, I think, in earlier stages, they need confidence. They have to build legitimacy with regulators and connectivity there because it is fully regulated. And so we've really helped them navigate that early and, leverage our 10 years of learning over here across the
Mhm.
pond.
So it's almost like going, showing up and getting a seat at the table with almost all of the research being done with the compliance background of saying, this is what we've put together over the course of the last decade and how we've seen markets develop. And we know that, food, supply chain, and also food safety is much more stringent in Europe than here in the US. So being able to consistently hit a higher mark and showing up and saying, this is all the work that we've done already. So we're coming way more prepared than anyone else.
Absolutely. Going through with some of the pharma clients, the GMP, compliant process. It's a lot of documentation. It's a lot of process. It's a lot of structure, and helping them sail through that quickly and efficiently builds a lot of trust at the very forefront of the industry's emergence over there. And so it's been very important to be that stable, trusted partner over there. And part of the reason I was in the UK is it's becoming a much more important part of our growth story. And
Mm.
so we're going to be much more intentional, international, and focused on what's going on not only in Europe, but you're seeing things evolve in Australia and Asia and South America.
Yeah, I was about to bring that up as well. Like, what's happening in Australia and what are you seeing in South America? And how are they, how are they, how are they set up right now in terms of True Terpenes working with brands and customers there?
Sure. And those aren't at the level quite that, certainly not Canada, which is more advanced than any of these countries, or even the EU. Some of those other emerging markets definitely showing signs of promise. There's more limitations in
Mm.
terms of the range of ingredients that you can use. And oftentimes some of our cannabis terpenes or other extracts are off limits for now, and we'll go the natural extracts or botanical side instead. A lot
Mhm.
easier to sail through, and they tend to look for simpler formulations. It's easier to get fewer ingredients through regulatory. So whether it's Europe, whether it's Australia or South America, they tend to be more basic products initially, with less ingredients and of a narrow ingredient set. I think that'll evolve over time as the markets open up. But I think the approach in some of these markets is cautious at first as they learn about the product category, the market, the industry.
Mm. Well, they certainly don't have dispensaries like we do in the US.
No, no. The level of sophistication over here is yeah, it's an industry that's evolved much further over here. We do as those markets open up, though, we are very interested in becoming, delivering more complex, nuanced, solutions with more character. And so the data, the learnings from the US and kind of the maturity of this market in its own right is something we can also, leverage as we grow into those other markets.
Yeah, as you straddle the pharmacology and the more medical aspect of how cannabis is developing overseas versus here in the US, where it's much more recreationally driven.
Yes, absolutely. The work we've done with Dr. Ethan Russo, who's on our science advisory board, and some of the formulations that he's pioneered do resonate in markets abroad because of their medical application. In terms of applications in general, again, more restrictions abroad. Pre-rolls aren't allowed everywhere. Vape in certain places, yes. In certain places, no. Tinctures tend to be a bigger thing abroad than they might be in the US. And then, CBD has really continued to grow even outside of THC over there.
Yeah. I'm sure when you're speaking to other CEOs and leaders of MSOs here in the US, they're also looking at, expansion. We know a number of US MSOs are expanding in Europe and have their eyes overseas, but at the same time, the breadbasket is still here in the US. So as you're thinking about the challenges of what MSOs are going through right now here in the US, um, how is True Terpenes working with those companies as a strong partner?
Yeah, some of the larger organizations, what we'll do is essentially portfolio audits based on region.
Mhm.
So we'll understand first because it's nuanced depending on where you are, and there's certain things you can or cannot do based on your geographic focus. So the first thing to do is really break down their territories and opportunities based on region and what rules apply in those different regions, and then it's to really run a portfolio audit of what they have in those regions, what's working, what are they missing, and kind of what can we help them build out in terms of an integrated solution to maximize their revenue. So it's very much, on the spectrum, we're not, a commodity ingredient provider at all. We try to understand the client situation. It's very, specific to which area of their business we're looking at. And then we really try to put together that solution and again, reduce complexity for them and help them generate revenue. I mean, that's what they want.
Yeah, a lot of brands really struggle with SKU rationalization, looking at what are the dominant SKUs that are driving the majority of their revenue, and while at the same time looking at where's the white space, where are they missing out on, and consumers are you know, starting to ask for at the dispensary level. So, with $8 billion worth of products that True Terpenes is going into, you're going to be able to see that trend, and that affects the type of brand partner in that
Yeah, yeah.
relationship.
Uh, Absolutely. There's a fear by some of the brands to let go of some of that long tail of SKUs because even though it's generating just a little bit of revenue, it's still revenue, and they have a hard time letting go of that. And we encourage rationalization of portfolio because it does distract, it does dilute your attention to what's really working.
Yeah.
And we do encourage, a culling of the SKUs that aren't working. Focus on the ones that are, and then really find out where you're missing other opportunity to build out your portfolio. I think it's gone. The days of being kind of provincial about the marketplace or ignoring certain segments of the marketplace are we just seeing less and less of that, and more of an open-mindedness to really embrace where there's opportunity, be flexible with your ingredient sets, be flexible with your applications, and serve as much of the market as you can. And if it's with the tiered brand structure, that's one way to do it. There's different ways to do it.
Yep. Like a
But
hospital.
yeah, but you can't ignore the growth opportunities.
Well, I just find that the dispensary level, what's really fascinating, because I get to see some of that data, is a divergence of a more sophisticated cannabis consumer who wants to taste the plant. They're strain uh, chasers. They want the nuance of the plant personality, and then you've got the younger audience of cannabis consumers who are looking for full flavor. They want the effect, and they don't necessarily want to taste the cannabis plant, but they want the feel. So you've
Hmm.
got polarizing aspect of sensory demands from
Yeah.
the shopper base.
It's a spectrum. It's a spectrum, and we try not to be judgmental on what the thesis of a brand is or what the market opportunity of a brand is. We're here to serve the industry, and so you're right. There is cannabis. There is hemp. There is natural. There's botanical, and so you have your cannabis forward, and you have your flavor forward, and then you have hybrids, right, of mixing products with both sides. So you can have a cannabis background with a top note from a more fruit forward aspect, and come up with something truly unique and compelling. And I think at the end of the day, the consumer and the patients are the bosses. Those are the ones who you have to pay attention to. What's resonating? And there's not one segment of this market that they're turned off to. You have to really serve all of it as an industry. And so that's what we try to do. And even beyond terpenes, you're talking about other compounds. We talk a lot about terpenes and being true terpenes, but it's also thiols. It's, and thiols, we're talking about that skunkiness. It's esters and kind of that sweet, candy. It's aldehydes, ketones, alcohols. There's all sorts of different compounds that really round out that experience and distinguish one product from another.
Mm. So what are some of the trends that you're seeing that customers are coming in and asking for?
There's two major trends that we're seeing right now that we've alluded to a little bit. One is focusing beyond the kind of heavier molecules into those lighter, more nuanced molecules that disproportionately drive the effect. And they don't even have to be there in high volumes, high quantities. It could be 0.001% and completely flip the experience of the product. And so paying attention to those parts per million, parts per billion flavor molecules that really shape the experience is essential, because that's what will really distinguish you from the rest of the pack. And that's how you can set products that will command differentiation on the shelf, in the jar, in the hands of the consumer.
Yeah.
But also command higher profit margins and ways to really sustain yourself and endure in the marketplace with a unique proposition, a unique story, unique experience. So that's one. And the other one is really combining these different, groupings of ingredient sets into unique solutions. So the limits to that are creativity. Again, we have a very broad supply chain, the broadest in the industry. And so we're able to tap into these different buckets to come up with something completely unique, where the only limit you have to it is how creative you are and kind of what you can dream up.
Yeah, with these trends that you're seeing, brands are, they're looking at creating segments of their, even if it's a single brand and not a full brand house, where they might have a flavor forward distillate line, and then you're going to have a more true to plant live resin or rosin. And they're coming to True Terpenes and asking for that robustness of being able to deliver that type of consumption experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And we spent 5 years really working closely with the plant. In our genetics program, we've been on farms, both sensory and helping to manage the farms with our partners. The extraction range of what we've used is BHO, it's CO2, it's steam. We've really tried all of it and become very close to the plant in that way. We've hand harvested 100 acres, which is really tough, and then fresh frozen all of it and managed cold chain after that, which is challenging. But throughout the experience, it's really brought us close to the plant. It's really given us an appreciation for what's in there, and not only what's in there, but how to retain it, how to harness it. Sometimes it's like trying to catch sand; it just kind of slips through your fingers. These compounds are very unstable and very volatile, and so appreciating that and appreciating end to end how to go from field to the store to the end product is essential, because at the end of the day, sorry,
being able to capture it.
Yes, being able to capture it and just owning that end experience. We don't care about selling flavor in a bottle. For us, it's shaping that end experience.
Love that. So what's next for True Terpenes? What can you tell us?
Few things on the horizon. One major project that we have is really taking some of our data to the next level. We spoke a little bit about some of what we see, the vantage point we have in these billions of dollars of data that we're witnessing and kind of seeing the trends on and able to capitalize on that. So harnessing that data with more powerful methods to analyze and make recommendations on it is a big area for us. We will continue research on the the minor volatile compounds. That's a huge area for us that really shapes product differentiation and experience. And we have some exciting things with our genetics program going into field trials in December.
Wow. Well, what's 2026 looking like for the team?
We have in 2026, we have some of the most important product launches, certainly in the 5 years that I've been at the company. And we're incredibly excited about those. The first one we will be launching for a select group of clients. We'll be presenting to a select group of clients at MJ Biz. So thrilled about that. And we have another 2 major product launches throughout the year, and very excited about those. Those are out of the box, product lines. Really, there is no comparison in the market for a lot of the stuff that we're doing on these major launches. In addition to that, we keep the innovation work going with custom work with some of our key clients, as well as always new flavors in our existing product lines. Every quarter we're going to launch new innovations there. And in terms of applications, pre-rolls is a huge focus of ours for the next year.
Fastest moving category in the industry.
Correct.
So with next year being such a disruptive year for True Terpenes, are there any special powers that you're going to be able to bring in as the CEO? Because this is my final fun question that I ask everyone who comes on to this podcast. If you were a cannabis themed superhero, and what would your superpower be? And if you had an alter ego, we can talk about that too. So next year is your year of disruption.
Yeah, no, if I had one power, it would be to shape the minds of regulators so they would come up with a one plant solution and do so in a way that sets sensible standards, that does age gate, for minors, but also allows cannabis companies the same opportunity as other companies in this country to compete and survive and not do it on unfair conditions.
Yeah, it's been a tough couple of weeks for the industry for sure.
Absolutely has, and I remain optimistic for the future. We just got to stick in the pocket.
That's right. Well, I'm committed and I'm still in the industry and I love it. And there's so many great stories to be told. We're lucky that we have, a world-class CEO like you within the industry and helping us to level up. And we're, really grateful. And thank you so much for joining us on Branding Like a Boss.
Thanks, Angela. That's kind. Appreciate you.
Thank you.